In this video, we're going to look at creating some items and adding those items to the room. So first thing we're going to do is add another room modification, and we're going to add what's called a bag to the room. Now, a bag is just a concept. Don't think of it as a literal backpack or a literal bag. It's just a it's a class that contains a set which is similar to a list in Python, except you can't have duplicate items in it. And we can add things to this set, we can take things away from it, and so on. So it's designed for putting things into it, taking things out of it. Essentially, it's designed for just keeping things together. So we're going to say that every single room has a bag, which means that every single room can have items in it. And we're also going to, down here, player construction, we're also going to say inventory equals a bag. Okay, so the player is going to have an inventory. This is going to be a global value that we'll be able to access anywhere, and it's essentially a bag. So this could be a literal backpack, it could be their pockets, it could be some portal that they carry around with them that they can jam stuff into, but this is going to be something that we can use to keep track of the player items, and it's going to have the name inventory. So a bag we can check to see if something is in a bag, we can take something out of a bag, we can add something into a bag, and we can loop through the whole bag. So we're going to see how to do some of this stuff shortly, but at this video we're just going to define some items. So we're going to do item definition. So basically what I'm doing is setting everything up at the top here, then I'll do my binds down the bottom, and then finally the just before game start happens. So we set up the current room, all that stuff. Maybe if the player's got hit points, we'd set that up down there. We could probably put that down there, but I'm going to leave it up here. So items, how do we define an item? Items are pretty simple. Items are another class within Adventure Library that it contains a description and a bunch of aliases, and that's really it. There's not much more to items. All they do is contain the name and then a bunch of aliases for that. So let's define something simple like apples equals, and this is taken from the example, the documentation. So apples, but it might also be known as some apples. If someone says take some apples instead of take apples, they might also say take apple. It's a red apple, so we'll take red apple. So anything that we think the user might say, we can put it as an alias. So we will be able to it'll just check all these. If we type take some apples, it'll work. If we type take apples, it'll work. One other thing we can define is we can define apples.definite name. And so what this is a definite article. We can say the apples, and we can actually use this in our program. There's one other thing we're going to do, and that is right here, item modification. Similar to how we modified the room by adding visited and items to it, we're going to modify all items. Item.description equals nothing. Every item is going to have a description. Now these don't need to be here. You may want to use items as people, and you could give these people hit points or things that they might say, which could just be a list of things they might say if you talk to them. You can really modify it in any way you want. I'm just going to add a simple description to each of these items. So apples.desc equals the apples are shiny and red. They look tasty. Full stop. Okay, so what we've got here is some items. Then item assignment. So here's where we start to put things in places. So end room is going to have some apples in it. End room dot items, which is a bag, dot add. We can add the apples to that room. So what's happening here? We take the end room, the bag attached to that. Remember, every single room has a dot items now, which is a bag attached to it. We're going to put things in it, and we're going to use the from the set function. So bag is a wrapper for a set. We can add things to a set, but we can't have duplicates. If we try to add apples twice to the set, it won't let us, and we can only have the apples in there once. So that's kind of handy because it means that we can't actually duplicate items in the game. If we wanted to have multiple apples, we would have to have multiple apple items with different names. So end room has the items here. Now, what happens when we want the user to be able to take the items, get the items, etc.? So let's have a look at what we can do with this. So we'll do this in our binds. And we'll just do it here. It doesn't really matter the order that you use the binds in unless you're calling, actually it doesn't really matter the order that you put the binds in. So the user might type in get item. They might also type in take item. They could type in a bunch of things. And so here, first thing I need to do really is check to see if the item is in the room. So we'll go global current room. If item in current room dot items, well then we can continue. But what we need to do here is actually get the item, because what we're doing here, and this is a little bit tricky, so current room dot items is a bag. We can check if the item that they've typed, so get apples, some apples, apple, red apples, whatever. I'm just going to print it out and say, yep, that's here. Okay, or actually I'll take, you take the dot format item. So if I quit this now and go here, take apples, well, nothing happens because there's no apples there. Go up, take apples. Where did I put them? In the end room. Okay, go down, go north. This is the end room. Take apples. You take the apples because they were there. Take apples. You take the apples. They're still there. They haven't done anything with it. All I've done is say that you take the apples. So what we could do though is we might want to say you take the definite name, because different items might have different ways of saying things. And so what I can do here, instead of that, you take item dot def name. Alright, so this is where it's going to crash. Go north, take apples. Alright, it says string object has no attribute def name, because it doesn't. This is currently just a string. Even though we've checked to see if the item is in the current room dot items, all we're checking to see is if that string that gets taken up by item, so apples in this case, is in the current room dot items, and it is. Okay, so its alias is going to be recognized in there. But this isn't actually the item object, it's just a string. So what we need to do here is go item equals current room dot items dot find, or take actually. We'll take it out of there, and we're going to put it into our inventory in a sec. Take item, and then inventory dot add. I don't need to do inventory dot items because this is basically the dot items here. So inventory is the bag. Dot add item. And then I can say print you take the item dot def name, and that should work. So I should be able to do this. Go north, get apples. You take the apples, get apples. Doesn't do anything because there's no apples there. So I would probably put an else statement here. Print you don't see any dot format item. And that'll just be the string because we only actually turn this into the object in this line here. Should work. Go north, take apples, get apples. You don't see any apples. Okay, or I could possibly write it so you already have the apples if the apples are in the inventory. Now let's have a look here and do what happens when we look at the apples. We want it to show its description. So at when. Now we can do multiple word things here. So look at item, or maybe they might say look item. And this could get confusing because I'm not sure whether this will work, but we'll try examine item. Those are three things that are probably pretty common. Def, look at item, item. Now here's where we will go and check global current room. If item in current room or item in inventory, print item equals this is a bit tricky because we actually need to take the item, so I might just write this separately. If it's in the room, item equals current room dot items dot find. We don't want to take it in this case, we just want to find the item. And then print item dot description. Elif item in inventory. It's the same code, except instead of that, it's just going to be inventory dot find. And then else print you don't see any format item. Okay, so what's going to happen here? Quit. Run it. Look at apples. Ooh. If item, oh, that should be dot items, my mistake. Look at apples. You don't see any apples. Okay, so that's eaten this bit up here. So I might just get rid of that because it doesn't really make sense. Look item. You don't want to make it too shorthand. Look at apples. You don't see any apples. Go north. Look at apples. The apples are shiny and red. They're tasty. Get apples. Look at apples. Still in my inventory. Go south. Look at apples. They're in my inventory so I can look at them. Okay. So I could also write a function, lastly, very last, when inventory. You might define other things here. Def inventory. For item in inventory, print item. And I might do something at the start. Print. You are carrying. And I could write some code here that checks if the length of inventory is greater than 0. If it's not, I could say you are carrying nothing. But I'm just going to do it this way. Quit. Inventory. Whoa. Full item in inventory. That's not. This is right. Oh, okay. I can't call function the same thing. So I'll say show inventory. Inventory, you are carrying nothing. Go north, get apples. Look at some apples. Okay, notice that it worked with the alias then as well. Look at red apples. It works. Look at apple. That works as well. Inventory. you are carrying apples. The first name that you put in there will be the one that shows up in the inventory. Everything else is an alias. So put the one that the user's most likely to type in there.